Welcome. Today I'm going to talk a little bit more about relationships and attachment styles and behaviors. So over the last week or so, I did a couple videos where I introduced this idea of attachment theory in relationships. I introduced that to you guys. I talked to you a little bit about an overview or about what anxious or avoidant and secure attachment styles mean. I talked about some of the specific behaviors that you see when you have either an anxious or an avoidant or secure attachment. And so I talked a little bit about some of the problematic behaviors and where they come from. And today I just want to talk about a little bit more about what do we do about it. So I actually went ahead and created a free PDF download for you guys. And so I had a few people kind of asking some questions and wanting to know more about this. And how do I figure out which one I am, and so on and so forth. So here's the thing. Again, this information that I've been presenting to you guys is largely based on this book, on the work of, I don't know if you say Amir Levine and Rachel Heller. And they wrote this book called Attached. And there's, again, multiple books out there and resources out there on attachment theory. They are not the ones that developed this attachment theory. In fact, I think Dr. Sue Johnson is the one who developed the attachment theory originally, back in like the 80s or something. And her book is also phenomenal. And she also talks about what does it look like when you have an anxious or avoidant or secure attachment? How does that play out in your relationships? And so when I talk to people about having painful relationship dynamics, or that they keep kind of repeating the same cycles in relationships, having unhealthy relationships, all that kind of stuff. So as a coach, I look at people, and I always like to start with this, specifically when we're doing relationship coaching. I like to look at what is your attachment style. And I like to know that going into it, because so many people, what they talk about when they come to me is behavior, right? I need to change this behavior, or I want my partner to change their behavior. They keep, they're emotionally distant, they're shutting down, they lose their temper, they lash out, they're going through my phone, they're acting crazy jealous, I just feel suffocated, or I feel ignored, I feel disregarded, disrespected. And they talk about all these examples of behaviors that make them feel all these horrible things, and then they end up responding, and it turns into this relationship dynamic that causes a lot of stress. And so what I like to figure out first is, what is their attachment style? And because when I know their attachment style and I can and link that to their behavior, that gives us a place to begin. If you download this PDF, the benefit to it is not only will it help you identify your behaviors and the way that you might be showing up in your relationship, but it will give you a percentage. And this is useful because you could just watch my video and listen to me list the behaviors, and you could be, oh, yep, I'm avoidant, or I'm anxious. That's me. I can sort of identify yourself in those behavior descriptions, which is a great place to start. The benefit to downloading the PDF and actually taking the quiz is because it will give you an idea of how anxious or how avoidant you are. And so, for example, when I took the quiz, I was 60% secure, 40% anxious. The thing about these anxious or avoidant attachments as well is that it does change over time. So when I'm in a relationship with somebody, or if I'm in a situation where I'm not being triggered, if I'm feeling really safe, feeling really secure in my life, I'm with a partner, for example, maybe that gives me a lot of reassurance and really builds me up. I feel supported, I feel loved, they're emotionally available for me, all those kinds of things. I am more secure. So in that kind of situation, I might be more like 80% secure and only 20% anxious. But if I'm in a situation where I'm highly triggered, my anxious behaviors are going to be showing up much more heavily than they otherwise would. And so it kind of moves around a bit. And the other thing about taking the quiz is you'll get to see how severe you are in each category, or you'll figure out if you fall more into the disorganized category, which is somebody who has both. So if you take this quiz and you end up being like 30% anxious, 40% avoidant, 20% secure, or whatever the math would be, that might be a tip for you, right? And so that might help you to sort of understand, again, that you're going to have a little bit more work to do than somebody who would be just anxious or just avoidant, because you're having to heal both of these wounds, okay? So I created, and essentially, and I cited this in the PDF on the first page, on the last page, all over the place, to say that the material that I put together into this PDF, at least specifically the quiz, I really just borrowed from their book and kept it super simple. There's so many quizzes out there. You can look them up online as well, that will tell you if you're anxious, avoidant, secure, and what your percentage would be, okay? So you can find it all over the place. If you want to get it from the PDF that I created for you, I'll put the link in the comments and you can just put in your email or whatever, and it'll email right to your inbox, okay? So that's the first step, is it helps you with behavior identification. So you see where you fall. Yep, those are my behaviors, and this is how severe it is. This is my percentage, and it gives you an idea to begin. The nice thing about the PDF that I put together for you is that after you know that, you kind of get your numbers and you can see where you fall and how it gets divvied up. The nice thing about the PDF is that I talk a little bit more about the belief system, essentially, about what's driving it. So this is how the anxious person shows up. This is how the avoidant person shows up. These are some of their common behaviors. Here's your percentages of each. And then you can look at and see, okay, what is the work? How do I heal? And this is the question that I've been getting from people most often that have been watching these videos. They've been reaching out to me and saying, I totally identify with that. Yep, this is how I show up with my girlfriend. This is how I show up with my partner. I get triggered, something happens, I just break up with her, or I get triggered, something happens, I'm super hot and cold. All this kind of stuff. I feel really insecure. I'm constantly like pushing and reaching out and feeling like I need so much reassurance, and it's putting a lot of stress on my partner, on my relationship, and I feel really unhappy in the relationship, and so on and so forth, right? I did a video talking about manipulation, especially for anxious partners. We can really slip into having almost mean behaviors when our needs aren't getting met, and we can force and manipulate and pick fights and be like, hey, I need this from you, and get really pushy about the needs that we're having and that the fact that they're not being met. And so that those expectations can cause a lot of pain when they're not being met, especially if you're in a relationship with someone who's avoidant. So I've been talking about this, and what people have been reaching out is saying, yes, I understand where I fall. Maybe they took the quiz, maybe they didn't, but their question is, what do I do about it? And so I wanted to lay that out for you a little bit, is just talking about what is the work that the anxious person needs to do in order to heal? What is the work that the avoidant person needs to do in order to heal and to be able to have healthier relationships? And so what that really comes down to is understanding, what are your attachment wounds? What are your love wounds? And how do I heal myself so that I can heal my relationship? Because here's the thing that I want to talk to you about today. All these behaviors that so many people focus on behavior, right? Here's your anxious avoidant, and here's all the behaviors, right? And here's what you need to do about it. And while this book does talk a little bit about childhood development and how these develop, the thing that most people don't explain to you is how behavior works. And so I don't know how many people I have talked to about, I mean, diet is an excellent example, but relationships, anything, it doesn't matter. Whatever the behavior is that you're trying to change, so many people just try to force behavior change, right? I'm just going to lose the weight and I'm going to white knuckle it and not going to eat the pizza or whatever. Or my husband just needs to, suck it up and be different, right? Can I just stop smoking, stop drinking? My wife just needs to be less needy. Can you just stop whatever the behavior might be? What I want to explain to you today is that if you focus on just behavior change and trying to force a behavior change without solving what drives it, it's not going to be sustainable. So this is why you'll see someone, your kid might comply with cleaning their room for a week, but then they go right back to their old behaviors. Or your partner might, okay, fine, I'll work on cleaning up the dog poop or mowing the lawn or whatever it is that you want that behavior to be. And they might do it for a little while, but then you find that they revert right back and they go right back to their old way of being. Who's ever experienced this? This happens at work. This happens with our employees. I need you to be more responsible. I need you to be more proactive. I need you to do this, 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 this. And we focus on the actions and the behaviors that we want from the other people in our lives, whether this is our partner, our kids, our coworkers, our bosses, our employees, whatever. And you'll see that behavior change for a little bit, and then it just goes right back. And the reason it's not sustainable is because most people don't understand, where does behavior come from? What drives the behavior? And it's like Stephen R. Covey talks about, it's like hacking at the leaves on a tree, right? And just being like, why do they keep growing back? Oh, right? It's so frustrating because behavior is the leaf and we have to get to the root of the problem. And until you solve the root of the problem, you're just going to be constantly trying to keep up with hacking away at behaviors and trying to force and manipulate and change someone's behaviors. And that's going to be emotionally exhausting. And at the end of the day, it's just not sustainable. It's not going to work. So identify the behavior, take the quiz, figure out which you are and what percentages, okay? And then once you have your behavior identified, you can read a little bit about, okay, what does each show up? Yeah, got it. And then we're going to talk about the belief system. What is it that drives the anxious or avoidant behaviors? And it's your belief system. I'm going to talk about that a little more on the next page. And what I do in my programs and everything that's what I have coming up over the next 2 weeks is I help you to change the behavior. But we don't change it by hacking away at the leaves and just chopping it off and saying, well, just be different, be more self-sufficient, be less independent, care about your partner a little bit more. You can tell someone what they need to do to lose weight or create a better marriage. But again, you can't change the behaviors until you understand what's causing it. And so the third step after the behavior identification, I help you understand your belief system, and then we start changing the behaviors. How do we change it? Right here. We change it by looking at the cause. So I'm going to talk to you about that a little bit. Let's see. Where does behavior come from? So this is just going to be a little bit of the class that I taught this last Sunday. I don't have time to do the whole thing. One of the things that I talked about is emotional resiliency. That's one of many tools that I teach when I help people heal their relationships, because it's a highly emotional process. But the part that I just want to talk to you about today is the biology behind behavior, right? We talked about manifestation. How do we get the results that we want, right? In this instance, it's the same thing. Essentially, the way that we get results in our lives is by taking certain actions, changing our behaviors, right? So what do I need to do in order to get out of debt? How do I manifest that? Well, we need to learn to budget. We need to learn to stop eating sushi, take out twice a week. We need to, all the things. You can tell someone what to do, the behaviors, the actions to take in order to manifest or create a result. But again, what you need to understand is those results, they're not going to be able to sustain that behavior or that action unless we go find what's driving it. And so this is what I want to talk to you about today. There are 3 components of changing when it comes to changing behavior. So transforming your relationships, transforming your finances, transforming your body, any goal, anything that you want in your life, any result that you want to create requires 3 things. And there's like this place in your brain where these things all kind of intersect, okay? And it's the seat of emotion, behavior, and our thoughts. Those are the 3 components. When I talk about like the life compass, I did a video on this, right? Our thoughts are the foundation. Because thoughts, once they're repeated enough times in your brain, it becomes a belief system. Okay? If I think a thought about, I can't ask someone for help, they're gonna think this and that and the other about me, and it's gonna mean all this stuff, and I need to be self-sufficient, I need to be independent, I need to take care of myself, I can't trust anyone, right? They're not gonna be there for me, they've always let me down, I can't trust people aren't trustworthy, you can't rely on them, can't rely on anyone. And you think that thought, I can't rely on anyone, gotta be self-sufficient, you think those thoughts enough times, it becomes a belief system, right? Or I'm not enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not lovable. See, there's more proof, they left, they weren't there for me, blah, blah, blah. Oh, screwed it up again, right? You think those thoughts enough, it becomes a belief system about who we are. And then it becomes part of our identity. And there's all the stuff that's important to understand. But the base where it begins is with a thought. And so there's your thoughts that you have. Those thoughts create emotion in our body. When I think a thought, I'm not good enough, how does that make me feel? When I think the thought, she lied to me, how does that make me feel? That creates an emotion, right? Maybe the emotion is anger. Maybe the emotion is distrust, whatever, but the thought creates an emotion. And then that emotion is what drives our behavior. That's where behavior comes from. And so we want to change people's behavior and just tell them to act differently. But what we don't ever do is go back and understand what is the emotion that's driving that behavior? And what is the thought or the belief system that is driving that emotion? So, for example, if I'm trying to lose weight and I think a thought about pizza, like, oh, I love pizza. It's my favorite. Say that's my thought. It's my favorite. I love it. Oh, I want it. That thought, I want it, creates the emotion of desire. And it's going to be so much harder for me. And then when I have that emotion of desire, what's the behavior? From that place of desire, I oftentimes eat the pizza, right? And what result does that get me? And so if I want to change the behavior of not eating the pizza, the best thing to do to make it sustainable, to make it easy, to make it run smoother, is to change the emotion. Well, what if I didn't feel desire? What if I could control my emotional life? And what if I could not have desire anymore? What if I could change that emotion away from desire, and instead of having desire for pizza, maybe my desire is for not having, gut cramping all the time. So maybe if I thought the thought like, ugh, that stuff makes me really sick, how am I going to feel in my body? If that's what I'm thinking about and that's the focus, I'm going to feel really differently. My desire is going to be way down here for that, right? And if I can realize, what do I desire instead? I want to be, you know, I want to be in integrity. That's one of my biggest thoughts when it comes to the way that I eat and taking care of my body. I teach other people to take care of their body, to take care of their relationships, to take care of their life, right? To make decisions from a place of emotional maturity, I guess, but it's not even about maturity or immaturity. It's about what's serving you, right? Does it serve me to eat that pizza? Not really. My energy goes into the toilet. I feel like garbage. I don't get as much work done. And so when I think about you guys and that I want to have the energy to show up and feel good so that I can record these videos and help change your life, it might sound weird, but that's my reason. I'm like, I don't want to eat that garbage because I got work to do. And when I eat that garbage, I feel crappy. And so I don't have desire for it anymore because I've changed my belief system. I've changed my thoughts. I've changed everything. And so my emotion and my behavior follow that lead. Does that make sense? So thoughts, emotion, and behavior, that's the trifecta that creates results. So our thoughts are what activate our emotions and our behaviors, okay? And I'm not going to go talk too much more about the biology because this is just a quick video, but I want to show you how it sort of plays out. So a circumstance or fact might be, I receive a text message that says we need to talk from my partner. That's totally neutral. That could be a good thing, a bad thing, right? We have no idea. It just says we need to talk. It's just a fact. Well, that fact, that circumstance triggers a thought. If I'm anxious, if I'm an anxious person, anxious attachment style, that thought might be something, and a thought is just a sentence in our brain. They're not necessarily true or false. They're just thoughts. They're opinions, essentially, right? And so there are so many thoughts that we believe to be fact. We have thoughts about money. And again, this is belief systems, right? We have thoughts about, yeah, I can start a business, but it's going to be hard. I can make money, but making money's hard. For example, making money's hard. That's a sentence in my brain. That's a thought and a belief system that many people develop over. So I grew up in a very, in poverty. I grew up in a very poor family, never having enough. For me, God, Thanksgiving dinner came out of a box, right? Christmas presents came from bags in the church, already pre-wrapped. Here you go. We always wore hand-me-down clothes. People made fun of me for the way that I dressed, right? All this kind of stuff. Like I didn't grow up with that surrounding those belief systems about abundance and what's possible. So I had to relearn all that as an adult. I had thoughts like that I didn't even realize I was having until I started coaching. And it's like, well, yeah, I can start it. It's going to be hard, but I'll do it. And my coach was like, why are you telling yourself it's going to be hard? That's just a thought. That's a sentence in your brain. And I thought it was a fact. Well, of course it's hard, right? Not for everyone. Like, it doesn't have to be. That's optional. So say the circumstances, you get a text message, we need to talk, it triggers a thought, and the thought might be, he's going to break up with me. for sure or she is going to break up with me. That thought produces emotion and feelings, right? And so maybe the emotion that produces is panic or fear or desperation, right? And so when you're feeling panicked, that's what generates your actions. So from that place of panic, what actions do you take? What behaviors do you show up with? Oh, I need to call him 15 times. I need to go over there. I need to, whatever. Start saying, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't mean what, I don't know what upset you, blah, 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 blah. And maybe you're, and especially if you're dating someone that's avoidant, how are they going to receive that? Who knows, right? Maybe that thought he's going to break up with me, that might produce a feeling of anger. That's it. This is the 5th time he's done this year. I'm not tolerating this anymore. And maybe your actions are that you immediately go in there angry, defensive, and you go in there yelling, swinging, picking a fight. Maybe that's your behavior. And maybe it had nothing to do with that. But because of this whole cascade, now your behaviors are not productive, and that's what creates your results. And maybe now he does break up with you. Well, actually, I was just, calling to tell you that my mom's getting surgery, and I was wondering if you'd be willing to help watch the dog while I go to help out. But you show up this way with all these behaviors because of all these assumptions that you're making, all these thoughts and these feelings and these emotions. So there's this whole belief system that cascaded and already started to happen way before you got down here. And that's what produces your voice. And so what I want to show you is that so many people, when you go and you download this PDF, I'm going to give you the link to it, and you take the quiz, you figure out what your attachment style is, you figure out what are the behaviors that I am exhibiting in my relationship, what are the behaviors that my partner is exhibiting in our relationship, and you want to change the behavior. So many people want to change the behaviors. That's what gets focused on. How do I change the behavior so that I can have a better relationship? And what I want to do with you is, yes, let's identify the behaviors. Let's figure out where we're at, what we're doing. Let's look at that. But I want to look at, why are you doing it? Because I can chop leaves all day long. We can all sit here and chop leaves all day long. We can nag our husbands to take out the garbage. We can nag our partners to put the dishes in the goddamn dishwasher, for goodness sakes, instead of in the sink. How many times have I had to ask you? We can nag our kids to do their homework, to clean their room. We can nag our employees to be on time. Be on time. For goodness sakes. We can write them up. Let's force, let's manipulate, let's push, let's consequence to change that behavior. But this is where everyone focuses, is on just changing the behavior. And they never look at what is causing that behavior. Because if we can go back and change the belief system that is generating it, now the behavior change is natural. It comes naturally. It's sustainable. You're not having to fight it anymore. Those leaves aren't just going to keep growing back because you've removed the root system and you've replaced it with something healthier. And so again, when I come back to this first page, actually, hold on, it was back here. So behavior identification, take the quiz, identify the behaviors that you exhibit, find out where you are, find out what your percentage is, and then let's take a look at what is the work that you need to do to heal from these. And I'm telling you already, part of it is what I just showed you, okay? And from that place, the behavior will begin to transform naturally. Your relationships with your kids, your relationships with your partner. This will, and you start to do this work, friends, like, it's not just going to transform your relationships, it's going to transform your relationship with money and time. It changes everything. The way you do one thing in your life is the way you do everything. I promise you. The way you lose weight is the way you try and have conflict with your husband. The way that you have conflict with your husband and make decisions about that in your relationship is the way you make decisions about money. The way you make decisions about money is the way you make decisions about what to do with your kids. And when you begin to transform one thing to be healthier, everything else in your life will begin to overflow and impact everything else, because it's changing you. It's changing who you are, how you show up, what you believe. It's changing your identity. It's changing everything. So if you want the PDF to start with this, I'm going to put the link in the comments. And if you guys want to talk to me about any of the other stuff, if you guys want to sit down and do some coaching and figure out how all that shit works that I just taught you, I'm happy to show you that too. And we can apply that to your life and begin to do this work of really changing your relationships. So, all right. I love you guys. Thanks for watching. I hope you guys are having a beautiful week, and we'll talk soon. Bye-bye.